There is something you keep doing that you believe makes him love you more. You stay calm, you stay clear, you explain yourself before he ever has to ask. You hand him the map of your inner world before he even thinks about traveling there. And you do this because somewhere along the way, you learned that being understood is the same as being loved. But what if I told you the very thing you are doing to feel safe is the same thing slowly making you forgettable, not unlovable, not unworthy, forgettable? There is a difference, and that difference is everything. Carl Jung once suggested that what fascinates us about another person is rarely the person themselves. It is the part of ourselves we cannot name, suddenly mirrored back to us through them. Strangers carry our unlived lives. Lovers carry our unmet selves. And the moment that mirror becomes too clean, too literal, too explained, the fascination dies. Not because love dies, because the unconscious has nothing left to project. You may not have realized this yet, but the man who once seemed enchanted by you was not enchanted by your clarity. He was enchanted by what he could not yet decode. Stay with me here, because what comes next is going to reframe years of confusion you have been carrying. Picture an evening, ordinary in every way. He is on the couch, phone resting on his chest, the blue light cutting a soft rectangle into the ceiling. Your name appears. A year ago, that name would have made his stomach do something small and electric. Tonight, it makes him pause for half a second, then exhale. Not annoyance, something quieter, almost domestic. He knows what the message says. He recognizes the tone. He can already sense the shape of your concern, the apology tucked within it, the reassurance waiting at the end. And the human mind, Jung reminded us again and again, does not orbit what it has already catalogued. It orbits what remains unknown. This is the paradox you have been living without naming. You were convinced that being fully seen would deepen the connection. You assumed that opening up about your moods, your silences, your hesitations would keep him from doubting. You wanted him to feel safe in you, the way a child feels safe in a familiar room. But desire is not a child. Desire is closer to a wild animal that returns only when the door is left slightly ajar. You closed the door, gently, lovingly, with both hands, believing you were inviting him deeper inside. Instead, you removed the threshold he needed to keep crossing. Notice what happens inside you when you read that. There may be a small ache, a quiet defensiveness, a voice saying, "But I was only being honest, I was only being kind." That voice is not wrong, it is simply incomplete, because honesty without mystery becomes information. And information, no matter how tender, eventually becomes background noise. Jung wrote about the persona, the polished face we present to the world, and the shadow, the part we hide even from ourselves. Most people assume the goal of love is to dissolve both, to stand naked before the other with nothing concealed. But Jung understood something subtler. The shadow is not only what we are ashamed of, it is also what is still becoming. It is the unfinished self, the contradictions, the strange dreams we cannot quite explain at breakfast, the quiet rebellions we feel walking down a street alone. When you erase your shadow in the name of transparency, you are not giving him more of you. You are giving him a version of you that has stopped growing in his presence. And a man, any human being really, cannot remain captivated by something that has stopped becoming. Think of the early weeks with him. You were not strategizing, you were simply unfinished in his eyes. He never learned which song could bring you to tears. He never noticed how your expression shifted when you bent the truth, even softly. He never truly understood the contours of your loneliness. And so his mind kept reaching, kept filling the gaps, kept building you in his imagination at the same time he was discovering you in reality. That is what falling in love actually is. It is the imagination working overtime to complete a portrait that refuses to be completed. Then something shifted. You started narrating yourself, not because you were insecure, although sometimes that was part of it, mostly because you cared. You wanted him to never misunderstand you. You wanted to spare him the discomfort of wondering. So you began to translate yourself in real time. I am quiet tonight because work was hard. I did not respond because I was overwhelmed. I seemed distant on Tuesday because I was thinking about my sister. Each explanation, by itself, was generous. Together, they became a closing door. Now, before we go further, I want you to notice something important. If this is landing somewhere tender in you, if you feel that strange mix of recognition and grief, stay with me. This is not a video about playing games or pretending to be aloof. This is a video about returning to yourself, and if these reflections are the kind of thing your inner life has been quietly hungry for, consider subscribing, because what we are about to explore in the second half goes deeper than tactics, deeper than relationships, into the territory Jung called individuation, the slow becoming of who you actually are. Now, back to the doorway. There is a moment in many long relationships where one partner begins to feel oddly invisible, despite being completely available. She is there, she is loving, she is consistent, and yet, somehow, she is being looked through rather than at. This is not because her partner has stopped caring, it is because his unconscious has run out of questions. The unconscious, in Jungian thought, is not a basement of repressed memories alone. It is a living, restless intelligence that organizes our attention without our permission. It pulls us toward the unresolved. It lingers on the unfinished sentence. It returns again and again to the face we cannot fully read. When you become entirely readable, his unconscious quietly turns its head. Not toward someone better, often toward nothing in particular, just away. And you feel it before you understand it. You feel it as a kind of static between you, a flatness, a politeness where there used to be charge. You feel it when he answers your long, careful message with "okay," and you sit there holding your phone, wondering when "okay" became the temperature of your love. Here is where most advice gets it wrong. Most advice tells you to withdraw, to punish, to play hard to get, to weaponize silence. That is not what we are talking about. That is performance, and performance is just another persona, another mask, another way of vanishing from yourself. What Jung would point you toward is something far more demanding and far more honest. He would ask you a quiet question. Where, in all of this explaining, did you go? Because somewhere between trying to be understood and trying to be safe, you stopped having an inner life that was yours alone. Thoughts turned into things to share, moods into things to justify, and dreams into material for conversation. You outsourced your interior to the relationship and then wondered why the relationship felt so flat. Imagine, for a moment, a woman who keeps a single drawer in her mind that she does not show anyone, not out of secrecy, out of self-respect. In that drawer, there are unfinished thoughts about who she is becoming. There are memories she has not yet decided how to feel about. There are small contradictions she does not need to resolve out loud. She is not hiding from her partner. She is simply remaining a person rather than a transparent room he walks through. When she laughs at his joke, the laugh is real, but it does not reveal everything. When she is quiet, the quiet is hers, not a problem to be solved. When she says "I love you," the words land with weight, because they are not the 100th reassurance of the day, they are an offering from a self that still belongs to her. Now contrast that with what so many of us slip into. We narrate, we overcorrect, we apologize for moods we have not even fully felt yet. We treat our own emotions as customer service issues, to be addressed before the complaint is filed. And in doing so, we teach our partners that nothing inside us is wild anymore. Nothing is sovereign. Nothing is ours. Notice how exhausting that is, even to read. There is a tiredness in always being available, always being decoded, always being the calm one. that tiredness is not weakness, it is the soul protesting its own erasure. Jung would say the soul does not want to be merged into another. It wants to be related to. There is a vast difference. Merging dissolves. Relating respects two distinct centers of gravity. When you relate, you bring a whole self into contact with another whole self. When you merge, you leak into him until there is nothing left of you to miss. And you cannot miss what you have not lost sight of, even briefly. This is why couples who have been together a long time, the ones who still seem charged after many years, often share something subtle. They each still have a corner of themselves the other cannot fully enter. A creative life, a spiritual life, a friendship, a way of being alone. It is not distance, it is depth. The depth keeps the other person curious in a quiet, ongoing way. He still does not know everything about her. She still does not know everything about him. And after 20 years, that not knowing is not a failure of intimacy. It is the very ground intimacy keeps growing in. Now think about him again, the man you love. When you stop performing transparency, something interesting happens inside him, and it has nothing to do with manipulation. He starts to feel, faintly, that you have an inside, that there are rooms in you he has not entered, that the woman across from him at dinner is not a fully solved equation, but an ongoing one. His attention, which had drifted into autopilot, begins to focus again. Not because you are withholding love. You are not. You are still warm, still present, still his, but you are also, finally, your own. And that small recovered sovereignty changes the entire weather of the relationship. He notices the way you pause before answering. He notices a half smile that has no obvious cause. He hears you mention a book he did not know you were reading. He sees you come home from a walk with a different look in your eyes, and he does not get a full report. His mind, almost without his consent, begins to wander again. Wandering is the oxygen of desire. Without it, love can survive, but it cannot burn. I want you to feel this, not just understand it. Close your eyes for a moment after you finish this video and ask yourself a simple question. What have I stopped keeping for myself? Not what have I hidden out of fear. What have I given away out of the desire to be perfectly known? It could be your spiritual questions, the ones you used to write about late at night. It might be your ambitions, now softened into shared logistics. Perhaps it's your moods, once textured and strange, now reduced to manageable updates. Or even your imagination, that part of you that used to drift somewhere private while you stared out a window. Whatever it is, that is the territory Jung would call your own. And reclaiming it is not a betrayal of love. It is the precondition for love that lasts. There is a quiet kind of grief in realizing this. You may feel that you have spent years optimizing yourself for legibility, and that the very effort that was supposed to bind him to you has been thinning you out. Let that grief move through you, but do not stay there, because the same insight that wounds you is the one that frees you. You do not have to be more. You have to be less translated, less explained, less narrated in real time, more inhabited, more inwardly furnished, more at home in the parts of yourself you do not feel obligated to share at the dinner table. When that shift begins, the relationship begins to breathe differently. He senses it before he can even put it into words. His gaze lingers on you just a moment longer than usual. Without thinking, his hand finds yours for no particular reason. Then, almost shyly, he asks what's on your mind. And for the first time in a long time, you will be allowed to say, "I am still figuring it out," and let that be enough. That sentence, "I am still figuring it out," is one of the most quietly powerful things a person in love can say. It tells the other, "I am alive in here. I am not a closed file. I am a process. Stay close if you want, but you will never own all of me, because I do not yet own all of me either." And paradoxically, that is when he stops drifting, because the part of him that fell in love with you was never the part that wanted to finish reading you. It was the part that wanted to keep reading you for the rest of his life. You are not too much. You are not too lisibly. You are simply ready to come back into your own complexity and to let the man who loves you discover that he never fully knew you and never will, and that this is not the end of intimacy, but the beginning of its deepest chapter. So tell me, in the comments below, what is the one part of yourself you are quietly deciding, starting tonight, to stop explaining away and start protecting again?